Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're jumping into a book that really just blew the lid off how we think about success, Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. Let's get right to it. So let me ask you a question. It's one we all think about. If I just work harder than everyone else, can I guarantee my success? Well, Gladwell's whole point is that that's not even the right question to be asking. The real story is so much more complicated and honestly, way more interesting. And this is the bombshell at the heart of the book. Basically, he's saying we are obsessed with the who, their talent, their ambition, their intelligence, but we completely ignore the where and the when. All right, so first up, we've got to tear down this whole idea of the self-made hero, that person who, against all odds, rises up from nothing, completely on their own. Instead, Gladwell gives us this brilliant concept, the ecology of success. Picture the tallest, most majestic oak tree in the forest. Now, did it get that way just because it came from a super strong acorn? Of course not. It got that way because of where it landed. It had rich soil, it got tons of sunlight, and no other trees got in its way. Gladwell says high achievers are exactly the same. Okay, so let's break this down. How does this ecology of success actually work? Well, Gladwell says it all comes down to two essential pillars that create an outlier. It really boils down to two key ingredients. On one side, you've got opportunity. All those lucky breaks, the hidden advantages, just being in the right place at the right time. And then you have legacy, the stuff that's passed down, your cultural inheritance. Gladwell's whole argument is built on how these two things collide. So let's tackle opportunity first. This is where things get really interesting because it's all about the advantages that are so often completely invisible to us. All right, rule number one is something Gladwell calls the Matthew effect. It's an idea that comes from the Bible, basically saying the rich get richer. It's this incredible snowball effect where a tiny head start can turn into a massive, life-changing advantage down the road. And this right here is the perfect, almost unbelievable example of this in action. Look at this chart. A crazy number of professional hockey players in Canada are born in January, February, or March. So why? It's simple, really. The cutoff date for youth hockey leagues is January 1st. That means a kid born on January 2nd is going to be almost a full year older, bigger, and more developed than the kid in his group born in late December. And what happens next? Well, those bigger kids get noticed. They make the all-star teams, they get the best coaches, they get way more ice time. It's not that they were born more talented, not at all. It's just that their random birthday advantage kept compounding. Sociologists have a name for this, accumulative advantage. And that brings us to the big one. The idea that you've probably heard of even if you haven't read the book, the 10,000-hour rule, the magic number for true expertise. But here is the absolute key that so many people miss. It's not about having the grit to practice for 10,000 hours. It's about having the chance to. I mean, the Beatles, they got their hours playing these marathon 8-hour gigs in shady clubs in Hamburg. And Bill Gates, he stumbled into almost unlimited access to a computer in 1968. That was like having a personal spaceship. It was pure dumb luck of the environment. Okay, so rule number 3 is a real curveball. Gladwell hits us with the threshold effect, which basically says being a super genius isn't all it's cracked up to be. Once you're smart enough, being even smarter doesn't really help you succeed more. And this comparison is just wow. It perfectly illustrates the idea. On one hand, you have Chris Langan, IQ off the charts. On the other, Robert Oppenheimer, another genius who ran the Manhattan Project. But Oppenheimer had what Gladwell calls practical intelligence. He knew how to talk to people, how to persuade them, how to work the system. Langan didn't. And that one skill, which is often something you just learn growing up, made all the difference in the world. All right, so we've covered opportunity. Now let's shift gears to that second pillar, legacy. This is the idea that where your great-great-grandparents came from and what they did for a living, well, it's still shaping who you are today in ways you can't even imagine. And the stories Gladwell uses to back this up are just fascinating. For example, he looked at airline crashes and found that co-pilots from cultures with a high power distance index, basically cultures where you do not question authority, were less likely to speak up to a captain making a mistake, with tragic results. Then there's this incredible connection he makes between the intense, detail-oriented work of rice farming and why students from those cultures often excel at math. It's this invisible programming that we all carry with us. So that's the core of the book. But how does it feel now, looking back from 2026? Well, the writer and critic Santiago Duran has a really sharp take on it.
Duran makes this fantastic point. He says the book is intellectually liberating, right? It takes all this pressure off us to be some kind of self-made superhero. But at the same time, it's also deeply deterministic. I mean, if everything comes down to your birth month, lucky breaks, and your ancestors, where does that leave our own agency, our free will?
And Duran just nails the summary with this quote, bringing us right back to the beginning. He says the individual is a myth. We are all just branches on a very specific, very lucky tree. It's a pretty humbling idea, isn't it? We're not these lone oaks after all.
So what's the bottom line here? The big takeaway from Outliers is that success isn't this magical, random thing that just happens to special people. It's a pattern. It's the predictable result of a whole web of advantages and legacies that all come together at just the right time.
And that leaves us with a huge question, one that's maybe more important now than ever. If we accept that pure meritocracy, the idea that the best and brightest will always rise to the top on their own, is a myth, then what do we do? What should we be trying to build instead? Maybe it's a society that stops celebrating just the tallest trees and starts figuring out how to cultivate the entire forest,